form of discipleship is not a pattern of discipleship. It's kind of like the spiritual program. In upholding our spiritual life, this is one of the things that we can look to. What does it mean to be a disciple? And Paul is ultimately encouraging people to look to the higher things. That is not to be anxious about the difficulties and trials and burdens that we carry, but to keep our eyes lifted up and our gaze forward to the destiny that is in store for us. How do we do that? Well, that's what this is about. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. That is not to be held down by the things of this world which distract and bind and lower us, but rather be exalted, be lifted up. Think of the higher things that God has in store for us and the destiny that he has in store for us. Keep on doing what you have learned and received and heard and seen in me. So it is both what we think and what we do, which is important. This forms us in the life of discipleship and prepares us for the heavenly kingdom. Rather than being the people who have failed to give a return to the Lord, by this transformation of heart and looking forward and looking up, we prepare ourselves for the fullness of the reward that he has promised to us. That's kind of the spiritual point of the reading. But I've been asked to do something more this weekend. Father Marin, a couple months ago, came forward and with our new construction program, and we've had the model that has been out in the narthex of the church. And so I've been asked to kind of give an update as to kind of where we are in this, and to deal with a couple of questions that have been raised, which I think it is important for us to deal with. Since we have put up the model and begun to solicit some comments and some input, we have gotten a lot of response, as you might imagine. This is a fairly major undertaking. And all of those things have been taken into account. So, for example, one of the questions that's been asked is about plans, and I didn't realize that what we get when we started, the architect kind of begins with kind of what are you looking for, what do you need, and so what we have currently are some very preliminary drawings. So that they kind of just establish the size of the space that we're looking for, how things relate within the building, and a very basic perspective. The architects are in the process of completing what are called 25% drawings, and that will allow us to start to go to contractors and begin to get some bids, and they can give us a range of what certain things will cost. So, for example, you can't go to an electrical contractor and say, well, what's the electrical work on this going to cost, until you tell him how many light fixtures, where you want them, and how many outlets you want. And this next stage of drawing will begin to answer those questions. It's also where we begin to look at things like, is the floor tile, terrazzo, or marble? And what are the options and the costs as we look at a variety of these things. So while we have a rough idea and we know kind of what it's going to look like, we are still in the process of refining the design farther. One of the questions, for example, that has been raised is something that we are trying to address in the plan, and that is parking. We will, I have been told, be moving the entrance to the church in alignment with Jet Ferry and Mount Vernon, so through the light you will come directly into the church. Praise God, I don't know what took so long. But because we do that, that gives us some space to reconfigure, and we will pick up additional parking spaces as a result of this project. Now, does that mean that everybody's going to have direct access to Mount Vernon after Mass? No. Does that mean that everybody? Does that mean that people can still leave after communion? Definitely not. Okay. But we are addressing the parking issue, and the architects are looking at a variety of responses to that. It is certainly something that we're aware of. When we get started, and my argument is to do it all at once, I have a kind of a rather radical view of it, take it all down and build it right away and bite the bullet, but that may not be the best option in terms of being able to continue some programs and things that we need to keep going. We will almost certainly build, not almost, we will build the church first, because when we build that, the church will have meeting space underneath it and some rooms that we can repurpose while the new parish center is being built. All I can tell you is that when we are under construction, and those questions of where is this going to go and where is that going to go, those are being worked on one at a time. Much like St. Bridget's, when it was under construction, we will become really familiar with the gym as a worship space. Where other stuff goes, everybody will need to be flexible. And that's all I can tell you. I am sure that even the best laid plans will require some adjustment over the period of construction, and things will get moved around. But the idea is to try and keep as many things going forward that we can during this time of construction, and acknowledging that construction is just an inconvenient thing. But it is a necessary thing. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. The other piece of this, as we are developing plans, is formalizing the capital campaign. And we will be visiting every registered parishioner individually to talk about the program, to answer some questions, and to ask for contribution over a 5-year period. Is this doable? One of the objections that people have raised is, it's not really a good time to raise money. I have never been anywhere at any time when it's been a good time to raise money. All I can tell you is that out at St. Joe's in Athens, they bought their property, prepared the site, built a new school for $12 million, and they don't owe any money on it. Clark County is one of the poorest counties in Georgia. The average income in the 30338 zip code is a lot higher. The numbers say this is doable. As a reflection of what we'll be asked to do is for people to make a prayerful contribution, and people will talk with you about that when we work through the process. But I think that's important. This is about staking a claim on the future. I do not want to diminish the work that has been gone into this, and sometimes people have an objection to redoing what we have here because they were involved in the building of the parish from the beginning. And that is a fair concern. But the reality is that what we have, the facilities that we have, are from the 70s and 80s, and they're simply no longer adequate for us. They're too small, they're too cramped, and in a lot of ways, they don't work very well. My office sits next to the receptionist as you come in. I can hear every call that comes into the office, and the unfortunate part is they can hear every call I make. My office is cold in the winter, it's hot in the summer, and the space from a workflow perspective is just not adequate anymore. We need to make a commitment and an investment, not for what we need right now, but for what we need for what we need 20 years from now and going forward. I honestly wish that with a wave of the wand, that we could make this happen overnight, because the reality is that we need this now. It has been pointed out and presented that there are some structural issues with this particular building. And the question legitimately has been asked, well, why didn't we know about this before? How come have we talked about this in the past? I think all of you probably have something at your own home that is an issue, but you've just decided, I'm not going to deal with that right now. Maybe the sewer doesn't flow as fast as it should, or the water doesn't drain in the right spot, or if it gets a really heavy rain, there's a leak in a particular spot, and you should deal with it, you just don't want to. I know that's certainly true when I go back and deal with my dad, who's up in his 80s, and his house needs some work, and he's always done this now himself, and he's at the age where he just doesn't want to do that anymore. Still won't let anybody else do it either, but that's a different story. But we're at the point where this is not a problem that we can ignore, or that we can ignore for much longer. But I'm going to take that off the table, because even if the church were sound, we would still need to do this project. If the church were sound, we would still need to do this project. I guess I go back to When there was several hundred families that began this, the meeting rooms and things were adequate for that. But as we're finding, and things are beginning to pick up in terms of activities, we're running into a problem where we just don't have any space for anything. And if you want people to call this their home, you have to have a place for them to come to. And in too many instances, we don't. There are naysayers in every project, and there are certainly naysayers about this, and I get that. And one of the rumors, which is rather ugly and not terribly true, is that Father Marion is interested in this and is building it for a monument for himself. And I can tell you that there's nothing further from the truth in that. If he wanted to build a monument, he was at St. Benedict's, a parish that was filled with young families for which he had paid off its debt. Before he moved, he was interested, and they were raising the money to build a gym so that the young people there did not have to play basketball at Johns Creek United Methodist Church and play soccer. Well, we couldn't build a soccer field because somebody built the church on top of a hill. But anyway, we were going to need more classrooms because his philosophy, because we were full. The church was busy from 7 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. And he has brought his philosophy there. He has brought his philosophy from there here, But he could have stayed there. The place was pretty much running himself. And what we have in mind is going to be a lot of work. And the reason we're interested in doing it is because it's what we need going forward. I was a deacon there. I was ordained a priest there. It was my first assignment before I went to St. Pius. And I found his pastoral approach was invaluable. And so when different groups would come and say, Father, can we start X, Y, or Z here? He would ask 3 questions. He said, is this program in line with the teaching of the church? Oh yeah, Father, it's really in line with the teaching of the church. Great. Is it going to cost me any money? No. We pay for what we want to do ourselves. We'll charge our fee or whatever. Okay. Do I have to go to any meetings? Oh no, you're fine. You don't really have to go to any meetings. Great, go ahead. That approach meant that building was busy from 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. There was always something going on, and the business manager said that's why they were raising the money to build the additional rooms. He said, no matter how worthy the next group is that comes to me, he says, I've got no place to put them. And one of the things I can tell you that as a newly ordained priest I observed was, the question isn't why is it like this here? The question is why isn't it like this at every parish? Now I will tell you that his philosophy is very much in line with what the Vatican II Council envisioned, with the apostle of the laity and the involvement in the missionary, in the involvement in the mission of the church. These things come out of where the Spirit is leading the people, and it is not just about what the clergy have decided for programs, but where people have decided to commit themselves. But the reality is we're not in a position to let that happen. In fact, we've had a few things pick up here, and we're basically out of room. Here's kind of a quaint but insightful example. At 5 o'clock, I said it was the ladies' poker group. After Mass, one of the ladies came up and said, Father, it's not the poker group. We play bridge. The men play poker. Well noted. Okay? But the ladies' bridge group is here, once a month or so. And they're in like 4 rooms because the space that we use for religious ed classrooms only hold about 8 people. And once you do that, especially as adults, they're just full. And the ladies with the bridge group are like, yeah, you have to do kind of this to get around the tables as you're coming in and out, because they bring really tasty hors d'oeuvres, which I like to sample when they're here. But as the ladies come in and out, it's very hard to get around. If you were to have a program and you were to gather any number of people beyond the first 6 or 8, you can't grow any more than that because we don't have any place to put you. We've really got one good conference room, and that's the library, and that's already booked most of the time, or the social hall, which is too big for a lot of things. And even then, you can only do one group at a time. Our youth program is pretty active, and they're using that more and more. So things are not as available as we need them to be. And folks have said, we'd like to have more stuff so that we can be more involved in the parish. And the reality is, unless we make this commitment and we make this investment, we're not going to be any better off. It is all the surrounding parishes have made, or truth for the surrounding parishes as well. But the surrounding churches, Dunwoody Baptist, United Methodist, and so forth, have had building projects because they've needed to improve or modify their facilities from what they had at the beginning. It is not a positive commentary on us that our last major construction was the columbarium. If what you're building is a place for the dead, it doesn't say very much for what you're doing for the living. And so we are at the point where if we are going to move forward and be a place where people want to come, not just today, but 20 years from now, we need to renovate what we need to basically redo what we have so that the space matches the needs and demands of the things in front of us. And that's why we're moving forward. And that's why we're looking to go on this. As I said, there are always naysayers with a project of this type. And believe me, it would be a lot easier for Father Marion to say no than it is to say yes, because yes means a lot more work for him. But I'm quite sure that there were those who were also opposed to the rectory. Why are you building it so big? We don't need this. They're such and such. Having taught for 9 years, while I was teaching, I was in something called special ministry. Teaching, campus ministry, prisons, hospitals, that sort of thing, people working in the tribunal or in the chancery. And the hardest thing for us is finding a place to live, because most of our rectories were built for what we immediately needed and weren't built to take into account the bigger picture. And so when this rectory was built, somebody had the vision to say, we need someplace bigger so that we can accommodate people. It's not that we needed it for the priest at All Saints, it's we needed it to help the mission of the church in North Georgia. And we had the vision to build it. And because we built it, Bishop Donahue had a place to spend during the years of his retirement, which were some of the most happy and rewarding times of his priesthood. Having worked long and hard in the heat of the day as a bishop and shepherd, this was a place where he could recover what he really wanted to do when he was ordained, and that was to do parish ministry. Because somebody had the vision to build the rectory in its size, Father McCormick doesn't have to move because we need his rooms for somebody who is handling the active part of the schedule. He's able to stay in what has become his home and where he should be allowed to stay. Bishop Talley now has a place to stay because he wanted to be connected to a parish even as he undertook his new job as auxiliary bishop. Father Peake had a number of pastors tell him no when he was looking for a place where he could be in ministry part-time and again be connected to a parish while he was still working on his recovery from leukemia. There were pastors who told him no because they didn't have any room for him, because the rectories are too small. But we had a space for that, And Father Marion has made it available so that you get the opportunity to meet people like Father Simon and some of the other priests of the Universal Church and have some experience of the church, not only outside of Atlanta, but outside of the United States. We did this because somebody had the vision to say, let's build something that gives us an opportunity to do it. When I was over at Pius, one of the things that they undertook was the addition of some art rooms. Now, a number of those programs had already been on campus at different spots, but if you go down the hallway in the arts corridor, the drama room is full, the dance room is full, the art room is full, the band room is full, all day. And you wonder, how did we do this without these facilities? You can't imagine not having them. And I assure you that when we build this, that's going to be the response. How did we get by without this? How were we able to offer these activities? How did we get by without these facilities before? It is about having a vision and making an investment in the future, and that's where we stand as a parish. If we are going to continue, if we're going to grow and continue to take that next step, we've got to have the facilities that let us do it. And this project is the way. The way forward. I ask that you pray for what we are doing and this project that we are undertaking. I ask that you pray about your involvement and commitment to supporting this going forward. And I invite you to think about what we can be going forward. It is not just about what we need right now or what I find useful for myself, but what are we leaving behind and what are we preparing the future for? And if we don't have a space to do those programs, then people end up going someplace else. And that's not what we're called to be. We're called to be we're called to be a city on the hill here, and we're called to be a light of the gospel. And we need to bring forth those resources which allow us to fulfill the mission that we've been given. Let us stand and profess our faith.